All right, welcome back to Introductory Algebra. Today we have section 4.2, division with exponents. So we have another property. We're going to see some other kind of weird stuff here in this section. And we'll end up with an example where we divide with scientific notation. So, property 4, a to the m divided by a to the n is equal to a to the m minus n power. So when we multiplied with the same base, we added the exponents. Now that we're dividing, we're going to subtract the exponents. So I have two examples here. The first one, let me move out of the way, x to the 7th over x squared. I'm just going to subtract. 7 minus 2 is 5, so I end up with x to the 5th power. My second example, though, is a little bit interesting. I have x to the 4th over x to the 9th. This time, the bigger power is on the bottom. So it makes sense that there are more x's on the bottom than there are on the top, which means after we do this, our x's should end up on the bottom. And so what you want to do with these is you want to kind of pay attention. If the bigger power is on the top, you're just going to subtract like we did on that last one. If it's on the bottom, though, you could do 4 minus 9, which would be negative 5, and have x to the negative 5th, and that's something we're going to talk about here in just a minute. But it's easier to just say, you know what? I know there are more x's on the bottom. I'm just going to subtract 9 minus 4 and get 5, but I'm going to leave it on the bottom. And when you do that, just put a 1 on the top. Basically what you're saying is I know all the x's on the top went away. I'm leaving a 1 there because I need something on the top of this fraction, and I'm just doing the subtraction. So let's dig into that negative exponent just a little bit. So that's what we're going to do on the next board. We'll look at negative exponents and maybe even a zero exponent. So that'll be fun. Okay, so I have a definition here for what happens with a negative exponent. And it is a definition. It's something people decided once upon a time, and it's how we do it. So a to a negative power is equal to 1 over a to the m power. Basically, a negative exponent is going to make a reciprocal. So if you think back to that last example, which is unfortunately no longer on my board, we said 4 minus 9 could have given us x to the negative 5th, but we decided it was just easier to think 9 minus 4 and have 1 over x to the 5th. And so those are going to be the same thing. So I do have some examples here. I have x to the negative 3rd. That's just 1 over x to the 3rd. Notice when I bring it down, that exponent changes to a positive. Here I have 2 times x to the negative 4th. Now importantly, this time, that negative exponent is only on the x, so the x is the only piece that moves. The 2 stays put, right? You can think of this whole thing as being over 1. The 2 stays put. It stays on the top of the fraction. The x moves down to the bottom and changes it to a positive 4 exponent. My last one, we have 5 over x to the negative 7th. So this time the negative exponent is on the bottom. Well, all that's going to happen is we're going to flip it. Again, we're going to do a reciprocal, so we're just going to flip it. But the 5 stays. The x this time moves to the top, but we don't usually need to write over 1. We just bring that x to the 7th up to the top, and 5x to the 7th is the same as 5x to the 7th over 1, so we just usually leave that 1 out. Very different from here. Here the 1 really matters. 1 on top is important, but 1 on the bottom, not so important. All right, let's get 0. That'll be fun. All right, so I have an example here with scientific notation. We have 3 times 10 to the negative 8th divided by 6 times 10 to the negative 6th. As I hope you would kind of expect here, it's going to work very similar to the way we did our multiplication with scientific notation. I'm just going to divide 3 and 6. 3 divided by 6 is 0.5. Be careful, make sure you do your division in the right order. The top number always goes first when we divide, so if you're throwing it in your calculator, don't do 6 divided by 3, you'll get 2. And that wouldn't be right. We need to do 3 divided by 6. Remember, fractions, decimals, these things happen, and it certainly doesn't mean you have a wrong answer. So then I need to be careful and subtract my exponents. Here I need to be really careful because I have negatives running around, and negatives can mess up everything. So please remember, top minus the bottom. Negative 8 minus 6, that gives me a negative 14. So I have 0.5 times 10 to the negative 14th power. But unfortunately, this is not in scientific notation. Okay, so we need to move that decimal point one more place to the right to give us a 5. Remember, we need a number out front here that's between 1 and 10. And since I'm moving farther to the right, I'm going to drop my exponent by one more. Remember, when we go to the right, we get negative exponents, and the further right you go, the bigger your negative exponent gets. So since I went one more place to the right, my negative exponent is going to get one bigger. And there we go. That is scientific notation and dividing. So thanks for coming, and have a wonderful day.